Hi, welcome. This is Debbie Brown with Colorado Business Roundtable, and we're kicking off this roundtable with Colorado's bioscience industry and talking about how they're taking on some of the greatest health challenges that we're facing today. And really excited to welcome this panel to talk about these issues, and especially what the broader-based business community needs to know and how we can be supportive of their important work. So help me welcome today, we've got Jennifer Jones-Paton, President and CEO of the Colorado BioScience Association. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Debbie. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Dr. Nick Saccomano, the Chief Scientific Officer and Site Head for Pfizer Boulder RD. Welcome, Nick.
Thanks, Debbie. Great to be here.
And last, Bob Reddy, Vice President of Global Marketing, Medical Education and Training, Medtronic, and also the Chairman of the Board of Directors for Colorado BioScience Association. So welcome, Bob.
Thanks, Debbie. It's my pleasure to be here.
So great. I've let all of our guests know that we do these virtual roundtables to help educate all the partners that we have with the Colorado Business Roundtable on pressing business issues of our day. And really, what could be more pressing, unfortunately, than some of the issues that we're facing with COVID-19 and trying to be supportive of our partners who are trying to find treatments and cures and a little bit within that industry. So I want to know a little bit about each of you. Give us a sense of you and your organization, a little bit more about why you're here for this conversation today. And let me kick it off with Jennifer first, because she might be able to tell us a little bit more about the Colorado BioScience Association as well. So Jennifer.
Great, thanks, Debbie. Again, Jennifer Jones-Paton, President and CEO of the Colorado BioScience Association, and proud to be here today. Proud to have you all hear from, two of our member companies and two companies that are doing incredible work in general and in the COVID-19 space, but also have you learn more about our industry and the Colorado BioScience Association. So the Colorado BioScience Association, we represent the life science industry here in the state of Colorado, and that includes medical device, pharmaceutical, biotech, digital health, and animal health. And there are about 720 companies in the state of Colorado. And as an association, it's really our goal to create co-opportunity for our state's life sciences community. And with that, we're committed to creating a collaborative, pro-innovation environment for these companies that are developing these life-saving breakthroughs and technologies. So we support our companies from concept to commercialization and make sure to support a business climate and really just help the companies along the way as they are growing and doing great things here in our state.
That's a great overview, Jennifer. I'm actually surprised to hear that there are so many companies here in Colorado within your industry. Is it growing? Tell me more about, how those numbers have changed.
Yes, so that is a great question, and I think a lot of people are surprised if you don't know the life sciences, bioscience industry that well, that there are 725 companies here, and it is growing. We had a recent report that was released in June, and it showed that our employment is growing. We employ 32,000 people directly here in the state, and that is up from 30,000 people, in the previous report. And so we are seeing the growth of just in employment and then also in companies. And our companies, for our concept to commercialization, it's a long process. It's a lot of work that goes into it, and you'll hear from Nick and Bob from their companies, but it's not something that happens overnight. And so that growth and that success of our companies is something, our innovators and leaders are putting, their blood, sweat, heart and soul into these companies and, ultimately to have an impact on patient lives. And it's just very inspiring. So we are seeing that growth, and I'm excited for you guys to hear about even some of that growth in the COVID-related space and hearing from Nick and Bob.
Perfect. Well, that's a good segue. We'll jump in, and I'll start with Bob. Bob, tell us a little bit about what you do. You've got a role with the Colorado BioScience Association as well as the board chair, and also working for Medtronic. Tell us about your journey here in Colorado and what your day job looks like.
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. So while I can't claim to be a Colorado native, I've been in Colorado since I was 4 years old. So this is home, and it's exciting to be able to represent medical devices within the state and as a member of the Colorado BioScience Association. It's my pleasure to serve as board chair with a fantastic group of individuals that really represent everything that we do in the state and around the globe for medical device, pharmaceuticals, everything in the bioscience arena. Medtronic is the world's largest medical technology provider with over 90,000 employees worldwide, and we operate in 150 different countries. But we're proud to call Colorado home for about 2,500 of our employees, and our mission is to alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life. And that applies whether you live in the state of Colorado or whether you live in Australia. And so it's my pleasure to work for a company like that. We have a variety of different products and services that we offer, and my day job is to make sure that we can continue to serve our patients and their customers throughout the world.
Mm-hmm. I love your mission statement. Is that actually the mission statement?
It absolutely is. Yeah, we are a very mission-driven company, and of those 90,000 employees, I would suggest that all of them would know that the mission is to alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life.
Yeah, boy, that really sums it up. I appreciate that, and appreciate the fact that you're trying to be a native Coloradan as well.
Yeah.
I almost think we could sell bumper stickers like that, right? Like almost a native. And
almost, yeah.
I'll take.
I know, absolutely. So Nick, you are the Chief Scientific Officer and Site Head for Pfizer Boulder RD. That feels like a big weight on your shoulder. I'm sure your day job is very interesting as you work for Pfizer. Tell us a little bit more about you and what your role looks like.
Thanks, Debbie. That's right. I'm the SVP and CSO here at the Pfizer Boulder Research and Development Center on Walnut Avenue in Boulder, Colorado. But we weren't always that. Just a year ago, we were Array Biopharma, which was a small biotech that was started here. In fact, it was a chemistry-based organization around the turn of the century, if I might say. But that group has worked diligently and assiduously and quite ably for the past 2 decades to put together a world-class research organization and a substantial portfolio of molecules that have gone into clinical development, many of which, as of just this year, have been approved. We have 6 approvals as Array Biopharma, but then Pfizer stepped in and acquired us last year, primarily for our drug, which initially was targeting metastatic melanoma. That's binimetinib and corafenib, and more recently that drug's also been approved for certain forms of colorectal cancer. But Pfizer, in acquiring the organization, chose to keep the group together. Oftentimes when a large organization comes in, and we see this happen many times in Colorado, large organization comes in, buys a very able biotech, and then disassembles. But in fact, what Pfizer has chosen, and I think quite informedly, to grow this group and to continue to let us do our important research. We are primarily focused in the area of oncology, but as time goes by, we'll begin to work more seamlessly with other research interests and portfolio groups across the Pfizer organization.
And tell me this, it sounds like, for both of you, Bob and Nick, your organizations are in Colorado for a reason. I don't know if there's anything specific you want to give us in terms of how you're doing as a business, choosing to stay in Colorado, perhaps growing in Colorado. Was there anything that led to that decision as far as your company perspective? And maybe Bob, I don't know if you want to jump, if there's a thought on that.
Yeah, sure. Our basis in Colorado from a Medtronic perspective comes by way of acquisition, but given the talented employees and educated employee base that we have here in the state, we've remained in Colorado. So our operational headquarters is based out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, but Colorado is home for our companies and our products. Specifically, with our restorative therapies group and our minimally invasive therapies group in our Louisville and our Boulder campuses, but there's no desire to leave the state as through the acquisitions. It's more to grow it. And you may have seen in the news that we're looking to expand that footprint by combining our two campuses into one facility in Louisville, Colorado. And it's just a commitment to continue to grow our presence within the state.
That's great. Nick, any thoughts for you? You've had a different path, I guess, with the acquisition.
Well, I mean, it's sort of a story, and this goes along the lines of, honor those that have come before you. We were originally started by Marv Carruthers, who's a giant in Boulder and Colorado Biotech. In fact, someone might say he's one of the parents of this interest in the state. And that's Amgen came and set up a research unit around him and the type of technology he had developed back in the 80s. And then that grew. When Amgen left, there was a number of Amgen employees who chose to take the facility, take the people, raise money, and start a biotech, and that biotech was Array BioPharma. So we were drawn here by sort of a primordial biotech event, that is to say Marv Carruthers and the invention of solid phase oligonucleotide synthesis, and the story just followed the science, and at this point we are now Pfizer.
Okay, got it. And
Debbie,
probably,
if I can,
yeah, absolutely, Jennifer.
What I'm seeing from the Colorado BioScience Association, to both Bob and Nick's point, in Colorado, we have this world-class academic and research institutions, and we have a collaborative industry, we have a favorable tax environment, an educated workforce, and, compared to the coast, we're, somewhat affordable. And those things lead to, companies, wanting to look to locate here, or companies wanting to stay here. And I think going back to that educated workforce is a big part of it. And recently, and even in the past, year and a half, we've seen, the exciting news from the Pfizer, Medtronic, what Bob spoke to, Avexis, moving into Longmont, Sophia Genetics, the international company, going to the Anschutz campus on Fitzsimmons Innovation Community, and then most recently AGC Biologics, moving to Boulder. And so we've just continued to see companies interested in coming to the state of Colorado, and it's because of those things that I mentioned, a lot of it having to do also with the educated life science workforce, that really is a draw for companies.
Yeah, well said. I mean, at some point, it seems like perhaps this time last year we were worried about growth, for Colorado. And of course, that's one of the things that's changed so much as far as what's top of mind for Colorado citizens. And so that kind of brings me to kind of the main point of our panel is, doesn't it feel like a million years ago from when it was January 2020 and we were all thinking about, depending on what business you're in and what development you're working on and new technologies, whatever we had in mind for January 2020 has been completely changed and pivoted. So I'm just curious, and Jennifer, maybe I'll start with you as well. Like, how is this new dynamic with not only the global health pandemic and, from what I work on with Colorado Business Roundtable, it's more about the economic devastation that sort of coincided with it. But you all are front and center, looking at some of these health challenges. And how have you had to shift your mindset? What has 2020 been like for you? And Jennifer, we'll have you take a first stab at it.
Yeah, great question, Debbie. So for the association, I think our mission has not changed, and the needs and priorities for our members and our ecosystem remain the same, although they have slightly shifted with the pandemic, depending on, I would say, who the company is and what they're focused on. And we've seen really, and I can get into this later, but really the hard work of so many of our companies that are, stepping up and working on COVID-19 innovations and just continuing their original innovations that they've started. I will say in the last 4 months, I've just been so impressed and inspired by our industry. I always have been that, but even just to see how everyone's been collaborative and coming together. So companies, from the association's perspective, companies have turned to the association for things, resources, and support to navigate during this time. during the economic crisis. And so from the association standpoint, we've been very busy on how can we connect companies with whether it's state leaders or federal leaders, make sure they have information on loan programs, grant programs, all different types of funding, making sure that we tell their story and, that if they have ways to deliver on PPE or have an idea for an innovation or on a diagnostic perspective, helping the state, think through diagnostics. Really, the association has, and our members have been busy on that front. We've also seen many of our businesses that, like I said, have pivoted some of the work that they're doing to, play a role and try and support. And I've just, from the association, we, just trying to continue to be that connector for our members and companies, whether it be funding, HR support, what does safer at home mean? Can our companies still, go into their labs? How can they stay safe, their employees stay safe in the labs? So we're kind of just looking at it from kind of all different approaches.
Well, and the truth is, as you all know, I mean, all the other things you're working on pre-COVID still need work done. My dad has Parkinson's and, has treatment for that. My mom had to have a hip replacement once hospitals were reopened. There's still health challenges beyond that, as I'm sure you all know, because this is your daily life. Nick, give us a thought to how has life changed for your work and for Pfizer with the new focus, obviously, on COVID-19.
Well, I'm grateful to be able to say it hasn't changed a lot. We've stuck to our, sort of like a determined will to bring forward our portfolio of innovative cancer medicines, and we've made terrific progress over the last year, to an extent where 3/4 of the productivity we would have expected to have, we had even in the light of COVID. And the way that we've managed that is that the group here has been very dedicated to their science, and we work shifts, we wear masks. The people who can work from home, that they're enabled through web-based services and the like. And we continue to march on. There's a lot of people that are suffering from cancer, and we can't slow down the flow of medicines to the clinic. We just can't do it. And the scientists here are so dedicated. They're going to find a way to be safe, but be smart, but also continue to bring forward our programs, which is exactly what we've done over the last year.
Mm-hmm. Bob, do you want to weigh in on that one? How is life different for you since the beginning of the year?
Yeah, Debbie, you hit on it early on that our mission hasn't changed, and there are patients that depend on Medtronic for life-saving devices, whether they be pacemakers or heart valves, or, as you mentioned, deep brain stimulation products to treat Parkinson's. And so that hasn't changed, but what we did have to do is think a little bit differently and enable remote connectivity to some of our devices that are used inside the operating room. We had to reprogram some computer code on our ventilator so that we could monitor patients remotely and things of that nature. And so it's been a focus on our life-saving products, but also a focus on how we can make sure that our employees are front and center and protected, whether it be work from home that a lot of us are doing today. In fact, anyone that can work from home is, but we also know that we have a manufacturing operation that provides these life-saving devices, and so people do need to go into the office and into the assembly lines for these products, and making sure that they're safe, following cleaning protocols and checks on their wellness and safety. And then in the clinical setting, we have a lot of our employees who assist in the procedures and are there to support those procedures. So making sure they have the PPE that they need in order to serve the patients and put that front and center. So it hasn't changed the mission, although the activity might be a little bit different in this new environment.
Mm-hmm. Are either of your companies working directly on COVID-19 cures and treatments, or yeah, look, Nick is shaking his head. Nick, tell us about what you all are doing, and Bob, it looks like you as well.
Well, so the most public things which are ongoing right now is the vaccine development work, and as many people know, we're collaborating with a European company called BioNTech, and there's 2 vaccine candidates which are moving into registration studies right now, moving at a rate which is quite remarkable. Now, there's many vaccines which are coming forward from several companies, And that's good news because we're not necessarily sure which ones are going to work in which context and which ones are going to get out to the broader population sooner. But clearly, not only Pfizer but other companies are not only moving quickly, working closely with the regulators, and manufacturing doses of vaccine at risk, so that when there is a green light from the agency to be able to move into a broader population, we'll be able to do that. We'll do that very, very quickly. So that's good news, and the data continues to hearten us. The tolerability of the vaccines continues to impress us, and we and others are moving forward. But also, Pfizer has some other approaches in the therapeutic space because a vaccine is not going to be able to address this pandemic in its entirety, and so one really does need to have molecules or medicines that can not only fight the virus but also fight COVID illness, which is a separate set of complicated syndromes which are only making themselves known to us now. Those efforts, which I could talk briefly about, those efforts are coming forward now, and Pfizer will be telling the world about them shortly. But I do want to emphasize how much support I have felt from where I sit in supporting this effort, and we are doing some science in this space. The support we're getting from headquarters, and in particular Albert Bourla, who's our recently minted CEO, who's been very clear that this needs to be a priority for the organization as we move forward.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Bob, do you have anything to weigh in from Medtronic's perspective?
Yeah, one of the things that we noticed early on in this pandemic was that patients were relying on us to support them from a ventilator perspective. Medtronic makes Puritan ventilators, and we ended up increasing our production capacity from just under 200 ventilators per week to over fivefold that. And that was a very rapid response from our organization to provide the world with the ventilator products that they needed in order to serve these patients. In addition to that, we felt we could do more, and so we even open sourced 2 of our ventilator lines and put it out there for the public, for anyone who could manufacture them, to take the design specifications and manufacture them. And we've had over 200,000 downloads of those plans, and working with companies like Foxconn and like Vingroup to help then manufacture these products so that there was not a shortage of ventilators out in the world. That was just one example of how we've responded to this situation and what we've done to do our part and help the globe in this response.
Mm-hmm. That's a great story. I didn't realize that, and it seems like at the very beginning of when this all started, that was on the news quite a bit about ventilator shortages. So
absolutely,
you must have realized
we worked with
the demand was so great that you needed to open source. That's really fascinating.
Yeah, our CEO worked with Elon Musk, and they talked about production materials that might be needed and getting any help that we could to respond to this as quickly as we could, so that ventilators didn't become the issue. Yeah,
very cool. Jennifer, anything to add from sort of the big picture perspective of your association?
Big picture, I think we've seen over the course of the last 4 months, close to 40 of our companies in the state of Colorado that are working on something related to COVID, whether it's testing, diagnostics, surveillance, or a technology related to the treatment of COVID symptoms. And so, like I said before, it's just impressive to see what some of these companies are doing, and happy to get into detail of any of those later.
It really is. I was on a call with our members with Congressman Perlmutter, and he likened this situation to almost like he talked about like a tornado drill. If you've ever lived in the Midwest, I grew up needing to do tornado drills, and if you hear a siren, to go take shelter, and then there's sort of an all clear siren. And I thought it was so profound that I just keep remembering this story that, not only Colorado, but America and the world is waiting for the all clear siren, which probably can only come from your industry in terms of when there's a really viable treatment or a cure or something to make people feel like, there's a plan in place that has, that comes from your industry. So hopefully it goes without saying, but I'll say it anyway. I'm grateful for the work of your companies and your association and all that you're doing, because really it's there's so much on your shoulders to be a part of the solution. So glad that we have smart people figuring it out here in Colorado. That would be really exciting to have the cure come from here too.
Yeah.
So thanks for all you guys, what you do. We need that all clear for sure before the economy and all these other businesses that are sort of stumbling can really get back into full swing. So we've talked a little bit about how you operate in Colorado. Is there anything else that you do, what's going on in the US versus Colorado, what's going on globally with your company, or anything that you want to fill us in on? And I think too, with the Business Roundtable, we really understand sort of that interconnection of not only Colorado, but how we play in the national space. We do a lot of work in that world, as well as far as a lot of our partners do have a global interests, whether their own business or through supply chain and other issues. So anything else to add from that kind of perspective?
Yeah, I would add, when Pfizer acquired us, they committed to allowing us to stay reasonably autonomous, to try to preserve the biotech spirit, which allowed us to be successful. And they've done that in a number of ways, and relevant to exactly what you said. With respect to managing the pandemic and managing our work, they recognize that we're serious and reasonably intelligent people, and they've allowed us to keep ourselves safe and to remain productive. They, in fact, looked at the way we monitored and drove some of our business and sort of took some of those ideas back to some of the other sites, which are unfortunately, in many instances, in more embattled areas than we are. We're quite fortunate in that, Colorado, yes, we've suffered, but not so much as other places as well. I would also say that we're encouraged to remain curious here as sort of like an attachment, sort of the extra biotech that Pfizer has to drive innovation, and to think about the COVID disease in and of itself. What can we do? Even though we're focused on cancer primarily, what can Boulder do? And I would say, quite gratifyingly, we have a history in working in antivirals as well as working in immunology and the like, and in working in looking at our experience as well as collaborating with CSU, CU, and other universities, we're bringing forward a few of ideas as well for new therapeutics. And so, yes, there's a bigger organization. The megalith is out there and does pay for our research, but they really are trying their best to allow us to retain that entrepreneurial spirit, which can bring forward a lot of value for patients.
Absolutely. That it's sort of that innovation within maybe a larger organization. How do you still provide some innovation and disruption to some degree? So
it's not easy. It's not a second nature of a large company to allow a group of renegade scientists to run free. But perhaps we'll write a landmark HBS article in the future about exactly how to do that. I'm hoping to keep us on track.
Sounds good. Bob, anything else to add from sort of that national, global perspective on your end?
There's two things. I want to touch on what you just said, that innovation in medical devices is highly based upon collaboration. Medtronic started with a collaboration by an engineer with a physician and creating the first battery-powered pacemaker. And in the old days, the batteries were the size of a car battery, and now they're the size of a pill that you can place in the patient. And so that collaboration is foundational to our business and to how we can take healthcare further together. We are based in 10 states. We have major R&D and manufacturing operations in 10 states, but we're in 150 different countries, and everything that we do has a global look to it. We are in a global economy with healthcare being a big challenge all over. And so wherever we operate, we also have to take that global mindset into what we do. These diseases aren't just localized into one particular area or one particular country. And we believe that we can help patients around the world with access to our technologies and to our innovations.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the other interesting side note, I think, from this pandemic is it's not just affecting one sliver of the United States or one sliver of somewhere else. It is a time, I think, in particular, where people have had to come together globally to try to find solutions. So it's really important. Jennifer, I want to jump back to you and talk about some of the challenges from a public policy perspective. We've been talking a lot about the science and innovation, but tell us a little more about what policymakers can do to ensure that your industry actually is able to innovate and grow, not only in response to COVID-19, but all the great work that they're doing in all these other areas of illness and disease that are needed. So what are the biggest challenges for you right now in terms of what you do for the Colorado BioScience Association?
Thank you for asking this. This is very important to our association's work. Is, like I said in the beginning, making sure we have a supportive business climate for our companies to grow and innovate. Like Nick and Bob are talking about, it requires so much innovation. And access to capital, a few different areas, Debbie, if I might point out. But access to capital is really a top priority for so many of pretty much all of our members. And it's really, the challenge is funding, and particularly at that early stage, at all stages, but also the early stage when they're innovating and trying to get their concept to the next phase. And at the local level, at the state, there's an advanced industries industry grant program. And this grant program is a hugely valuable program to our industry and, quite frankly, all advanced industries. But this is something as an association we are going to continue to advocate for and make sure it's protected. This past legislative session, I want to thank the members of the General Assembly and kind of everyone in the community that has advocated for the importance of this program, because of the massive budget cuts that were faced, and that did take place. This important program was on the chopping block, but we were able, as a community, to come together and thank the leaders in our state for protecting the program, because it's very important for them to continue to innovate our companies that receive these grants. Something else that's important that we have here locally in the state is the Advanced Industries Investor Tax Credit. This is a great way to incentivize and encourage investors to invest in our companies, giving a tax credit. Access to capital is going to continue to be a top priority for our association and for our members. We work, all the time, every day, to actively accelerate the investment in our state, especially because if you look at the percentage of investment that we get compared to the coast, it is less. And so that's something where our companies do need this capital. Something else that I think would be important to take a look at is the supportive tax and regulatory environment. It's important that we have this supportive environment. Back to, why do companies want to stay here? How can companies grow here? Why do they want to move here? We need to make sure we have that supportive tax and regulatory environment for our companies. And as we as a state continue to face budget cuts and different shortfalls, there's always going to be ways in looking at how do we generate additional revenue, and that's something that we as an association are looking for. Like, we saw this play out in the last final days of the legislative session last year on a bill that would have made significant changes to tax code in Colorado. And it was a large bill, but part of it that would really have impacted our industry was a cap on NOLs, so net operating losses, and putting that cap on there. And if we had put that cap on, it really would have hampered innovation in our state and for so many of our companies. So it's stuff like that. We are vigilant as an association, making sure we continue to have a supportive tax and regulatory environment. And Debbie, I know you and your members are so active and helpful on these issues, and I so appreciate the support and how you guys are vigilant in making sure Colorado remains an important place, a good place to be able to do business. One other thing, if I might, we talked a lot about, you heard Nick and Bob talk a lot about innovation and, how a company can, where Nick is now at Pfizer, started from, Amgen employees that are innovated and, Ray Biopharma, and is now Pfizer. And one of our top policy priorities is to protect incentives for innovation. And that means, we look at having to push back against proposals that we know will reduce investment in the innovation pipeline. And then ultimately, that will defer the development of new breakthroughs and stifle research and development. And so we've seen different things about price controls and prescription drug affordability review board. And these are just things that we have to look at, the importance of, as companies look at expected revenues are an important innovation incentive. And it's appropriate to have incentives that fuel innovation and competition. And it's just something that we want to make sure that Colorado remains an ecosystem where companies are able to freely innovate and work on their research and development.
Yeah, well said. As I know Jennifer knows, and I don't know that Bob and Nick know as much about what we do for Colorado Business Roundtable. It actually is that. You just put it really well. Like a great economy for business actually helps people. I mean, the whole point is, when you help unapologetically be a voice for business, whether it's biosciences or tech or manufacturing, they're able to contribute so much to society in terms of the products and services they put out. They're able to hire people. They're able to fulfill their mission. I mean, there's just, it ultimately isn't about business. It's about the people that are helped. And so we push that message quite often, and we're actually coming up with some new campaigns along those lines. So happy to be in the trenches with you guys on fighting that good fight. And we've even thought about doing kind of a business boot camp for policymakers who maybe don't have, they haven't had an experience as businessmen or women or entrepreneurs, or haven't worked in a business setting before they became a legislator. So such great points about those unintended consequences, and letting the good work that Bob and Nick are doing every day, like letting them be unleashed to continue doing that great work and hopefully thrive in Colorado. So thanks
Debbie,
for all your work. Yeah, jump right in.
If I can add to that, just to maybe emphasize the point there, the realization that medical technology and the industry is a very highly sought after industry to be within any state or even any country. And as I mentioned, we operate in 150 different countries, and it is very common for us to have to be approached to put a research and development center or a manufacturing center in any one of these different locations around the globe. And so making sure that we understand that the industry has well-paying jobs and contributes to the growth within the state that we are based in. And so removing those barriers, ensuring that there's the opportunity for collaboration, and that the cost of regulation is not a barrier, or the cost of taxation is not a barrier to continued growth for our companies, is really important for policymakers to take under consideration, because there, unfortunately for the state, but there are options, other places that really desire to have this industry in their backyard. And we want to stay here.
Well, we want you to stay as well, so we'll keep fighting with you.
That's right.
We're kind of needing to wrap up, but I want to give you all a chance. We're going to go around. Is there anything, I think I let you know, a lot of our businesses that would be listening to this roundtable would come from sectors that aren't in yours. They aren't in biosciences. Is there anything that you had put down that you wanted to let them know about either what you do in terms of helping people live better, healthier lives, or more about your business aspect? Any closing comments? And we'll start with Nick and then head to Bob, and we'll give Jennifer the last word. So Nick, any other thoughts for you?
Yeah, I think that for biosciences, we may have rounded the turn of having critical mass in Colorado once and for all. We can put this to bed. We've been growing and struggling, but I think now with the device industry surging, with 4 majors and a growing biotech community, with funding at the universities at an all-time high, and collaboration between the sectors and the academy also with significant momentum, now's not the time to look back or to be timid. I think that we need to continue to work together, working through the association, working together to continue to keep and continue to grow the critical mass of talented people, so we can maintain our industry.
Absolutely. Appreciate all that you're doing in Boulder, and around the globe as well, Nick, on your work, and thank you so much for being here. Bob, closing remarks?
Yeah, I mean, I echo what Nick said, and you know, we are changing lives. Literally, we are changing lives. And as I mentioned earlier, our mission is to alleviate pain, restore health, and extend life. And it's easy to get up and go to work in the morning when that's what you do. And so, you know, Medtronic is a mission-driven company. We're proud of what we do, our 90,000 employees worldwide, and we're going to continue to do it and lead the way in improving outcomes.
Great, thank you. And last words from Jennifer.
Nick and Bob said it so well, but I guess I would just put out there, I'm just appreciative of Debbie putting this on and all of you that are joining to listen to this call and learn more about our industry. Encourage you, if you have any questions or want to get engaged, to you know, to contact one of us. But we have a strong and growing industry, and at the end of the day, you know, our industry is working day in, I would say this, day in and day out, like night and day, on, you know, developing new technologies and treatments, ultimately to save lives and help patients. And, you know, I am continually impressed and inspired by what our companies are doing, and they are providing good, high-paying jobs for Coloradans and kind of pushing the work forward of COVID-19, and just excited to see all our companies and how they're growing and expanding. So, but thank you, Debbie.
Yeah, you bet. And actually, I forgot to ask this. I meant to ask this when we were talking about COVID-19. Do any of you have any predictions? I mean, this is such a horrible thing to ask, but I mean, I'm sure you could ask this at dinner parties, like when's the cure going to come? When's the treatment going to come? And if you want to bow out of that question, I totally understand, but I think that's where most people are feeling very anxious.
I need my like glass, you know, my 8.
Yeah, I think that we need to refer to the magic 8 ball.
Good point.
I think everybody should be very hopeful that there's an enormous momentum in the scientific community, both in the academy as well as in industry, to sort of, you know, to take this on. This isn't the first pandemic, and it's not going to be the last. And many people think that there are dark days ahead and there are going to be many pandemics in the future. But I think we're arming ourselves and we're thinking clearly about how to address this from a device point of view, from a therapeutic point of view, from a vaccine point of view, that the foundation of our industry has changed in a way that we can feel good that the pandemics which may come and harm us many years from now, we'll be able to address them. That's my hope.
Well, yeah, Bob, you had one more comment on that?
Well, I think that if anything, what it's shown is the resilience of our employees and our understanding of how important medical technology, biosciences is to our overall well-being. And so, as Nick said, and as Jennifer said, we have people that are working around the clock to get to that answer and get us closer there, but also to understand what the current constraints are within the hospital systems, and making sure that patients have the equipment and technology and implants and drugs that they need to continue to fight the fight. So, you know, we're resilient, we're dedicated, we're passionate, and we're going to get through it.
Perfect. Well, you let me know where to send the Red Bull. And you pass them out to your teams. And, you know, I know you're already working 24/7, but whatever I can do to send some extra caffeine your way would be great. And I just have to say, I appreciate ending on that optimistic note. You know, particularly for us Coloradans, or us almost native Coloradans, like, you know, we're a feisty, innovative bunch by nature. And so I think smart people are working on this 24/7, and that gives me hope that, you know, like you said, we're gonna get through this, and the rest of the business community is cheering all of you on as you collectively are trying to figure out treatments and cures, not only for this but for other things. So thank you all so much for being a part of the roundtable today. Jennifer with Colorado BioSciences Association, Bob with Medtronic, and Nick with Pfizer. Appreciate all that you guys do here in Colorado from a broad-based business perspective. And again, all that you're doing to make people's lives better and healthier. So thanks for joining us today. This has been a roundtable sponsored by Colorado Business Roundtable. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Debbie.
Thank you, Debbie.